Good day, night, evening, whatever time may be, ladies and gentlemen. As I type this out, End of Dragons has been out for almost 4 months. In this video, I would like to delve into a few things inside of the game: Dragon's Stand, Dragonfall, and Dragon's End. The reason I'm making this video is because I don't think some people are seeing my side clearly, and I feel like I can make a better case here. So let us start from the first map we face a dragon on, Dragon Stand. Dragon's Stand in Heart of Thorns is a very fun map meta and a very enjoyable fight even after the first world clear, which I was a part of. The sense of taking the boss down was just an insane rush of enjoyment. Back then, the way the groups found a way to get a consistent clear was to separate into different groups for the towers. When the towers were reached, 5 groups were made, 1 on each of the healing pods, 1 group on the boss, and 1 group running around. From there, the current way of doing the boss evolved very quickly once certain things were figured out. That the preservers spawned at a set time compared to when they were killed, and where the preservers spawned while running around. From there, getting to the final fight with Mordramoth was also a feat. Learning when to attack the boss, the certain attacks the boss will do on the platforms, the helicopter phase for the real burn, and when he summons the tower guards again. Learning to maneuver around the area with updrafts and leg gliding was certainly a lot of fun while taking part inside of the fight. From there, we also have to look at the lead up to the fight against the Elder Dragon. So let us say you get on the map right as the timers change and you have found a commander tag. The commander would usually stay in one lane and see if others could lead the other 2 lanes. Once all 3 lanes have a commander, looking for group postings would go up. When setting up lanes for the advancement on the towers, groups can be as small as 10 to up to 30 or more players. With both these numbers, the entirety of the meta is doable and a kill can still be grabbed even if it does get very difficult. The other thing to look at is what roles are needed. Organization of any kind isn't needed save for 2 parts. One is which lane you are going to be following to the boss. There are 2 groups in the towers, the Preserver group and the Boss group. Nothing else is needed save for the small amount of organization. Both of these organization methods can even be ignored in the long run if enough people in the lane and the map are familiar with the fight. The tags on Dragon's Stand nowadays seem to have more of a symbolic role of where the lane is and to help new players move around and get used to the map. When the map was first released, any sort of tag was very needed to keep group together for the bosses. So let's talk about the meta itself now. With the meta, again, you are advancing from a forward staging area on 3 lanes to 3 towers. You have 2 hours to complete this goal, and the events rarely, if ever, stop for more than a few minutes. Most clears I can think of are done in about an hour or so. From there, we go to the towers and proceed to take down the champions inside of it. Once all 3 champions are dead at the same time, the map timer stops, the path forward is opened, and the final fight of the area begins. All 3 bosses need to be dead at the same time for this to continue. If 2 bosses die, but the 3rd still lives, the event does not stop. If the Preserver group lets a healing pod spawn, a dead boss will respawn at full HP and need to be killed again. In this next part, players are put on a different timer. As Mordramoth attacks, he will try to consume islands players use to stand on to gain power. Mordramoth has a health bar and a magic bar. When the magic bar fills before the health bar depletes, Mordramoth wins and wipes the whole map, sending everybody back to the start. When this happens, there might be 30 minutes or so before the next attempt. If a kill is successful, everyone then gets to run to the last tree and collect the rewards before having a short amount of time free on the map to explore. The fight with Mordramoth is a very forgiving fight and has plenty of room for errors or even slow burns during specific phases, but still allows players a fair amount of wiggle room to make sure they get their kill for the time they spent getting to the boss. So let's talk about the final part of the Dragon's Stand map, the reward system. As you complete events in the lane, reward chests will spawn around the waypoints on the map. Players will need an item called a machete to open up these pods and loot rewards from them, like a map currency called crystalline ore. This crystalline ore can be made into crystalline ingots, which are used for legendary crafting. Now, the ore is account bound, but you also get a very healthy amount while opening up all the pods on the map. From there, you are also getting other basic rewards such as loot bags and other things from the pods. Now, let's get into the next map meta, Dragonfall. Dragonfall is the final map in Living World Season 4 and our next big dragon fight. This time against the severely weakened Krakatorrik. On this map, there are again 3 paths, but instead of towers, you are setting up camps to harness the energy in the area to attack the dragon with. Pick a lane to help set up the initial camp, then do events that start from or lead to the camp for basic rewards. Most events that spawn in these camps will also lead to extra chests to loot from for a short time that need the Mistborn keys, which are also event rewards. If Krakatorrik is defeated, a timer does appear with a ton of extra bosses and extra chests are spawned around the area for players to go to. On this map, a commander tag is more needed to help build a map, but from there, they are used only in the final fight. The map does not have a set start or fail timer on it until the fight against Krakatorrik begins. The entirety of the map is based on events done to raise the levels of the camps, and once all camps are maxed out, events start that push to the dragon fight. All the time, rewards are still being placed as you complete the events. The fight with Krakatorrik is also a little chaotic. The dragon never moves, but you are killing him with 1,000 cuts. As you go around the area, a tag is nice to have so all players can go to one of the many weak points on the boss and activate the fight. Players are also told to grab extra weapons before going into the fight, which can help with dealing damage to the weak points. When a weak point is activated, players are given a set time to damage the point and can extend the time by dealing with an enemy mender that spawns with activation. Once a weak point is broken, it'll seal over and no longer be available to attack, and your team will get a point. Your team will need to kill 12 weak points to beat Krakatorrik. When 6 points have been killed, 3 bosses will spawn. There are also pylons that spawn in the sky, and flying mounts will be needed to get close to drop them. The group needs to split up to face the 3 bosses, and all 3 of these bosses need to die at roughly the same time to re-access the weak points and continue fighting Krakatorrik. As you do this, you are moving all over Krakatorrik, and there are plenty of close waypoints in case you do die or need to grab more of the mount-specific weapon to help with damage. Be sure that if you do fully die in this fight, to use one of the waypoints to get back into the fight instead of laying there dead. Once the group has ran across the back of the dragon enough and taken down the last weak point, a cutscene will play. All players will be moved off of the dragon and placed nearby, and a 20-minute timer will start, which counts down till map reset. In this part, players are free to roam around and either kill the other bosses for extra chests or work on other achievements in the surrounding area. From here, let us move on to the final map I want to talk about before I get into hard comparison, Dragon's End. In this meta, a timer does not appear until a certain time of day. The map is split into 3 sections, north, middle, and south. Each area has events that keep on popping, and as a player completes them, it fills the area's readiness bar. Getting an area to high readiness is key in the coming fight, as you will get a plus 5% damage buff to the new enemy type in the game, Dragon Void. When the time comes, the NPC groups in each of the areas will agree to meet in the north section to talk a battle plan, and a 1-minute timer will begin. When the NPCs meet up and decide on a plan, the players will be greeted with a 40-minute timer and 3 paths to choose. While doing events in preparation for the meta, each event will give a buff called Dragon's End Contributor. This buff grants, in Dragon's End, gain 10 seconds of Might, Fury, Swiftness, Regeneration, and Protection when entering and exiting combat, 20% increase to health and outgoing damage, and 10% increase to kill experience. Each stack of this effect will grant access to a bonus chest at the end of Dragon's meta event. This buff will max out at 10 stacks with the mentioned reading at 10 stacks. Anything lower will grant only that percentage, and some boons are tied to current levels of the buff. This buff at its highest rank will have a lasting time of 2 hours or until you defeat the final boss of Dragon's End, Soo-Won. The events in Dragon's End in each of the 3 areas spawn at different times and can easily chain, so knocking out 2 or 3 events in rapid succession isn't too hard to accomplish, so getting a full 10 stacks of the contributor isn't too much of a challenge. What fills the time is doing enough events in the area to make sure your region has high readiness. You have plenty of time to run around the area if need be while still working on the events, but the fewer people you have on the map, the longer it'll take to get all the buffs for the final fight. The other thing you will notice as you clear out these events is the lack of extra loot in the form of chests like we've seen with the Noxious Pods and Mistborn chests on other maps. We will come back to this point. There are two more buffs we do have to talk about inside of Dragon's End that you will want to grab. These are the Jade Tech Offensive Overcharge and the Jade Tech Defensive Overcharge. The offensive charge will give 150 power and condition damage in a nice stack of boons for 10 to 30 seconds, depending on the boon, upon entering combat. The defensive buff will give plus 200 toughness and plus 200 vitality, and another set of boons that will last 10 to 30 seconds, as well upon entering combat. When you have Jade Battery charges, you can use one of these nodes placed all over Cantha to gain 15 minutes per charge. Each buff can be stacked to last for just over 2 hours. When the timer is up and the NPCs get ready to head to Soo-Won, all players will be directed to a certain point of interest in the north section of the map. The map will need to split into 3 groups and follow the events. The east and west events will travel from the north section all the way to the south section of the map while saving certain areas from Dragon Void. The center path will clear to the Harvest Temple and make a rallying point near Soo-Won. When all of the paths are done, 4 Dragon Void bosses will spawn around the temple and need to be defeated. From there, a 5th will spawn where the center group stopped. After that, all arena will spawn 5 prisms where players must separate one more time to kill specific dragon minions to charge the prisms. Once all 5 prisms are filled, the 40-minute timer which started at the start of the escorts will end and players will be directed to the final challenge on the Harvest Temple. Now, let's get into the Soo-Won fight. This fight is one of the hardest challenges for a dragon in the game. The fight starts with just you and Soo-Won's head and a 20-minute timer. As you damage Soo-Won and avoid her attacks, she will occasionally use a breath attack that will spawn a CC bar when it finishes. Break the bar and get some damage in and you will hit the first phase. On this first phase, players will have to stand in a circle of AoEs. When the AoEs finish channeling, many players will be thrown off the tower in a new spirit form and have a larger energy bar. When you jump in this wisp form, you get a lot more height at the cost of an energy charge. There are plenty of other wisps around and just touching them will fill all your bars all the way back to full. Players need to rush back to the top of the temple before Soo-Won gets back. When you get back to fighting Soo-Won, she will be at 80%. With this, all of her attacks are the same, but also include trapping players in bubbles and her tail. While Soo-Won's tail's up, she will take reduced damage. Players should move to the tail and then back to the head and hope to get a CC phase. During this time, Soo-Won has a chance for a bite attack where most attacks won't be able to hit her, though conditions will still continue to tick. Once Soo-Won is down to 60%, the next phase starts. In the next phase, Soo-Won will fly around the arena at a fast pace and you are tasked with killing as many Dragon Void as you can. Arena will be making a spin-off of a Dragon's Blood Spear once enough enemies are killed. This spear will then help break Soo-Won's bar and enter the next phase. Players' spears are removed and they gain a new jump skill. There are 5 Jade platforms around the Harvest Temple, and on this portion 2 bosses will spawn. Players have to split and kill both bosses at roughly the same time. If one boss dies too fast, the timer on its death will run out, and it will respawn a la Octavine and Arc Basin. When both bosses are dead, Soo-Won will return to the fight. After this, no new mechanics are introduced. Soo-Won from 60 to 40% still deals with the tail, the bites, and trying to get her CC bar. On the 40% split, you will be tasked with another Wisp phase, but instead of one big chain of circles, now you have 3 smaller chains of circles. Stand in the circle, get yeeted, get your jumps in, get back into the fight. Soo-Won will return to the fight, and rinse and repeat. Now you have the final split phase at 20%. This is another one where you have to kill so many enemies to get the return of the Dragon's Blood weapons phase, and once the CC bar is down, you go to the next phase, but have 3 bosses this time instead of 2. Once the 3 bosses are dead, you will go back to face Soo-Won one final time. When you get Soo-Won down to 0%, your stacks from doing the events in the area will be used and you will be able to loot chests on top of the temple. There is more dialogue with Soo-Won and Aureen that talks about the Elder Dragon's origins. Now, there is something I have forgot to mention. All of this must be done in 20 minutes. So, with that, let's get into why I made this video. So, my thoughts with games is that players should not have their time wasted. In Dragonfall, you have plenty of time to get a group, to get to the towers, and the boss is forgiving for any skill level. There are also rewards throughout the entirety of the map, so even if a fail state comes, the players are still rewarded with more than XP and coin from events for their time in the area. The same thing happens here in Dragonfall. A few of the events in the map will give players only coin and experience, but there are more events which will give players mistborn chests and keys to open the chests. Even if the event does fail on the Krakatork fight, players can start the mission again and get chests. What about Dragon's End, you may ask? Sadly, there are no rewards spawned for players after completion of events, only basic coin and experience rewards. So comparing the three maps, Dragonfall may be the more profitable one to farm due to the map currency letting you get stat selectable ascended items and a chance for an ascended weapon chest with unique skins. All of the rewards for the Dragon's End meta are specifically locked behind getting a kill on Soo-Won, and now we get into it. When I look at the Dragon's End meta, I see a map that can last around an hour and a half or so before the final fight. When the final fight happens, it's the last 20 minutes before the map would reset and begin anew. One thing I didn't mention till now is at 20 minutes there is no pause to the timer. All of the 7 phases of the fight, though it could be argued 9 phases, counting the Dragon's Blood Spear and the subsequent bosses as different phases, must be done in 20 minutes. On public maps I've been on, some maps have had a commander tag on the map, but no organization of the subgroups if there are any. The boss timer will run out at the 20% mark and lead to players failing the event. Now, I have heard of people clearing this event with a very high success rate, but those are with groups that seem to be more on the organized side. Guild groups, streamer groups, very set subgroups with certain roles to fill them. I can see these groups passing at high times. For myself and others, I would honestly ask for something on ArenaNet's side. What I would love to see ArenaNet do is slight tweaks on this map, or the easier way is slight tweaks on the Soo-Won fight. All I would ask from ANET is a pause timer on one of the two split phases, either on the Wisp phase or the boss kill phase. This in my mind would keep the fight as a failable fight on maps that with not a lot of folks on it, or people who completely ignore all other mechanics in the fight. This would also allow players who had probably been on the map for over an hour enough time to knock out any other map meta to get their kill and rewards so their time doesn't feel like it was wasted. This would also make it easier for off-hour groups to be able to clear the fight more often. This will also keep the fight doable for far off in the future when Dragon's End isn't the newest map for players to get into. So this next part will be anecdotal, but I have personally ran into players who finally get the kill and rarely, if ever, say they will return to face Soo-Won again. The reason being is due to how easy the fight is to fail and how lacking in rewards the meta gives due to failing the final fight. The last time I ran the event, I joined a map that had a commander tag on it. I did all the events in the north section of the map and made sure it got to high. As far as I could tell, the other players had gotten to high on their sections as well. We all had the buffs, we all had the food, we all got to the Harvest Temple. We rode the lines to the fight with Soo-Won and engaged the boss. The first phase went smoothly and we did the circles. Where we began to fail was at the 80% to 60% section. When the tail came up, it took folks roughly to 20 to 30 seconds to move over from the head and begin attacking the tail. There was no call out. Due to this, we had also missed the CC phase on the boss. Soo-Won phase, and we took down the 2 bosses in fairly decent time. Soo-Won came back and we continued to fight her. We got on the tail quickly again, but not fast enough it seemed, as another miss of a CC phase. We got to the second of the Wisp phases and we got to the top of the tower fairly quickly, but we were getting really close on time, roughly 5 minutes left on the timer. The commander seemed to have none of it and left the map. Another person tagged up fairly quickly as the boss hit 20%. Soo-Won took flight, we killed for the spears, We jumped for the 3-boss split phase, and we failed the event. Soo-Won left, and we were all redirected back to the start of the map for a fresh map. So at least 40 people, if they had been there, got nothing from the event. Nothing save for a "thanks for trying, try again." Now, I am well aware that people are able to clear this fight fairly regularly, but I am not looking out for them. I'm not even looking out for myself. I'm looking out for players who may have a few hours a night to play Guild Wars 2. The ones who would make sure that when they play the game, they don't feel like one thing can make an hour of time dry up. The players who are nowhere near that fight may only get to it when most of the community has moved on to the newer maps in the next living world or the next expansion. So I'll wrap it up with this. Do I think the fight right now with Soo-Won is a nice, tough fight? I do. I do like the fight. I love attempting it here and there in my travels. The map is very well planned out, and everything around Soo-Won is amazing. Hell, even riding up the final line to go to the fight does still give me goosebumps. But having said that, the fight in my mind does need to be in a better place. Not for today, but for the future. For the players who don't have the hours upon hours to play an MMORPG and have to deal with family and real life things. For players who may have a disability. I have been in plenty of arguments on Twitter over this boss, and I feel like other players don't see where I'm coming from and think I'm only antagonistic against them. In a sense, I have been a little bit, and I will fully admit that. But one response I get every time I bring this up is, well, I like the hard content. I understand this to a point, but the game does have hard content. Strikes in their challenge modes, raids in their challenge modes, high level fractals in their challenge modes, hell, Harvest Temple. There is plenty of hard endgame content in this game, but missing a few mechanics in the Soo-Won fight can mean the difference between winning or failing for such a long event that makes no sense to me. I feel something has to change. The reason I make a big thing about this now is due to it being fresh in everyone's minds. I know the game developers can take a while to take action on certain aspects of the game, but I would pray that this video does get to others. ANET, the fight is good and is actually kind of fun, but locking out rewards from players until they do so seems iffy. The chance for pure random pugs, one commander tag, no organization, to beat it is arguably hard now and even harder down the road. Please look into this fight one more time. I know right now the clears are high, but in the future that might drastically change, and seeing as the team is here and can fix this fast, I urge you to do so. Only the time pause on one of the two phases is mentioned above. If a story aspect needs to be tied to this, then please use that Soo-Won is trying to fight back against the Dragonvoid inside of herself, so that Aurene and the others can do what needs to be done. From there, I will thank you all for your time, and I thank you for making it to the end of this video. I would hope that some of you walk away with a better thought process on how I look at this game, and specifically this fight as we go forward. I'm not looking at this for me. I'm looking at this for many other players. Do I want the fight to be spam 1 to win? No, that's why I didn't suggest it to be. But it does need to be a little bit easier when down the road, not as many people are playing Dragon's End. Look at the Dragon's Sand fight. Every 2 hours when it pops up, there's always a few tags, and it gets enough players to go through with it. There are times when I do look at DE, and the timer is hitting the hour mark when it's supposed to start. I won't see a single tag post for it. I just want it beatable by that pure pug I was talking about. One commander tag and no organization.